Welcome, welcome. Back again, once again, time and time again. I hope everybody had a nice and profitable trading week on and off the charts. And we're just going to have our Friday market breakdown as per usual. So Monday, Wednesday, Friday, in between 5:30 and 6:30, right around market changeover, we'll be having a little live stream. I'll be hosting a live stream over here on this channel. So make sure you are subscribed with the post notifications turned on, so you do get notified when I do go live. But let's go ahead and get right into it. We'll go pretty brief. If you've been following along with the last few live streams, not too much changes through the monthly and the weekly, but we'll still cover it. So we'll go fairly quickly through those and just kind of get down to the daily time frame, see what's changed. So if we take a look at gold from the monthly, we are in this structure support area. We can expect a bounce out of there on the weekly. Same thing coming into a double bottom. On the daily, we still have some daily structure we would need to see broken to the upside before it's a high probability to look for buys. So you want to wait until you get a little break above that, because then we'll be in daily bullish structure. Sliding down to silver. On the monthly, we were rejecting previous structure support that is now going to act as resistance, but until we start to make our way back up to that area, we are starting to push out of this once bounce, two bounce getting rejected out of this area. So we could see further continuation to the upside. Dropping down to the weekly time frame, we are starting to come into, like I said, this area of support right around in here. We could see a rejection to the upside to go ahead and complete the weekly M pattern that we do have. If we look at it from a daily time frame, on the daily, we are starting to make moves to the upside. We've recently broke some structure. We have impulse breaking structure. If we do get some sort of retracement, continuation to the upside for completion of the weekly M formation could be possible. Now, if we take a look at platinum from the monthly time frame, we are rejecting previous structure support. That's now acting as support once again. If we look at the weekly, you can see that this is a little more in detail. This area right in here, price is rejecting, making our way back up. So further continuation to the upside is possible. As we are right now where we left off, we wanted to see either a clear break above structure before we started to see the retracement, but we are starting to come into this area here that could give us this possible left shoulder, head, right shoulder action. If market does come down and retrace into this area, if it doesn't close below the structure support, it could be a possible sign that the market wants to explode to the upside. Now, if we move over to oil from the monthly time frame, on the monthly, we have a perfect impulse to the upside, retracement, retesting previous structure resistance that's now acting as support, with a further continuation to the upside to continue the trend of the market is highly possible. If we look at it from the weekly time frame, you can see we are coming into this area and we are starting to get rejected. From the daily time frame, we have impulse to the downside starting this retracement. If we do start to get some rejection around this area, it could be possible to look for the move to the downside. But seeing as how the market reached into this area and we are starting to retrace somewhat aggressively, it could be best to go ahead and wait for another clear break below the structure before we look for a retracement to the downside. And as well, if you want to see moves to the upside, it would be nice to see it break some structure before you start to look for buys on this market. Going down to Euro USD. On Euro USD, we do have on the monthly time frame a market that is pushing to the downside, extremely overextended to the downside, so a correction is due. If we go to the weekly, you can see we are starting to look like we want to complete this weekly M formation as well. You know, it wants to complete at the neckline. That could provide a nice setup for further continuation to the downside. From the daily, we are starting to make and break some structure to the upside, but it would be best to see it break this structure here before you start to look for buys to the upside to complete the weekly M formation. GBP USD from the monthly. On the monthly time frame, pushing to the downside fairly aggressively, but we are coming into some monthly support right around this area. So we could see some possible rejections from there on the weekly. We just completed the impulse We had an impulse, retracement, impulse. We just completed that, so a retracement is due. And on the weekly, we also have an M formation that you would like to see completed at the neckline. And if we drop down to the daily time frame, we are starting to come into some levels of structure resistance, but it would nice to see the market create and break some more structure before we start to look for buys to the upside to complete the weekly M formation. Going down to AUD USD on the monthly, we did have this area right in here that is acting as some support. Price did dip below it, but it just rejected. Right now, we could see further moves to the upside coming from this area. We do have a touchdown in this area once, and then coming into it and starting to get rejected once again. On the daily, we do have a market that is starting to break some structure. It'd be nice if we get a little retracement and then further continuation to the upside would be where I would like to look for a buy for the market to make a move to the upside. USD CAD from the monthly. Last time we spoke about it making higher lows on its way up, coming into an area of previous structure resistance once again, where we wanted to see the market still continue to the upside, but the market can't move in one direction forever. So a retracement is due. On the weekly, we did have a weekly W formation that you'd like to see completed at the neckline. The market did complete that. And then on the daily, it is putting us in a good position to have just the most common pattern in the market is an impulse to the upside, some retracement, and further continuation to the upside to continue the trend. So everything is lining up just exactly like we wanted to see it. On NZD USD from the monthly time frame, we do have a market that is rejecting previous structure or resistance, and it's pushing to the downside. On the weekly, we did come into this level of support right in here, but we are starting to break down to the downside. And if we look on the daily, we do have a market that is currently retracing. It would be nice to go ahead and see this market break some structure and go ahead and complete what would be some sort of makeshift weekly M formation to come back and complete at the neckline. So before we start to see that, it would be nice to see the market complete or break above and close above some structure support before that happens. USD Swiss on the monthly, we did say that we had a nice and easy impulse retracement. We want to see the next impulse to the upside, but the market can't move in one direction forever after we came into previous structure resistance. We are starting to get rejected from that area. But if we do look at it from a weekly time frame, you can see that we do have a nice and easy W formation that just completed. And then if we look at it from a daily time frame, we do have a market that has aggressively sold off. So it's not ideal to look for the move to the upside because we do have three bearish candles that encompass more candles than it took to get to the upside. So it is a little extreme on the downside. Probably not high probabilities to be looking for a move to the upside right now on USD Swiss franc. On USD JPY on the monthly time frame, we do have a market that is breaking and moving above structure very aggressively. On the weekly, we did just complete this retracement. So we had the impulse to the upside, the retracement, and the impulse move has just completed itself. And if we do drop down to the daily time frame, we can see that we've had all this impulse to the upside. And a retracement is due. It would be ideal if we get a retracement. We can then look for the next move to the upside. GBP NZD from the monthly time frame, we last spoke about it, was coming into this level of support, starting to reject from a double bottom. We expect higher prices. On the weekly, we did come into this level where we had a nice and easy move to the downside retracement. We just wanted to see the pattern complete itself, but the market can't move in one direction forever. We did get some sort of pullback, rejecting the structure area down here. If we look at it from a daily time frame, from the daily, we did speak about it, that it could possibly break down, and if it did break down, we wanted to see break below structure support. But since we had this move up, retracement was due. And if we do get a move to the upside, breaking some structure, then we would be in a nice bullish market to see moves to the upside. GBP CHF from the monthly time frame moving to the downside very aggressively. On the weekly, overextended to the downside very aggressively. Retracement is due. And if we do hop down to the daily time frame, you can see that we did a breakdown below the structure support that was holding for quite a while. And if we do get some sort of retracement, we can then look for the continuation to the downside. Euro NZD from the monthly. Last spoke about it creating this inverted head and shoulders right in here. We are starting to see the continuation to the upside. On the weekly, we do have a market that is exploding to the upside. It did provide the retracement and the continuation to the upside exactly as we wanted to see from the beginning of the week. And if we do drop down to the daily time frame, you can see that exactly what we wanted to see on this market was when we last spoke about it, move to the downside and then move to the upside to complete impulse retracement, impulse move. If we do get another retracement that does set up and satisfy the rules, we then can look for the continuation to the upside once again. CHF JPY from the monthly time frame moving to the upside quite aggressively. On the weekly, a very aggressive move to the upside. If we do get some sort of retracement, it would be ideal to look for the continuation to the upside. On the daily, you can see that we just had this impulse and that a retracement is due. And if we do get the ideal setup for the retracement, we can then look for the continuation to the upside. Euro GBP from the monthly time frame. On the monthly, we are breaking above some structure. What you can see here is we are moving down, up, to where we have previous structure resistance in this area that we are starting to approach. From the weekly time frame, we are currently approaching that area once again, where it should act as structure resistance until broken through. If we do get the break above, I could then look for the retracement. We can drop down to the daily time frame and see that we did get some sort of break to continue the pattern of an impulse, retracement, impulse to the upside. If we do get another retracement and impulse breaking above this structure, if we get a retracement back in here, can then look for continuation to the upside because that's when the probabilities will be at its highest. AUD CAD from the monthly. AUD CAD from the monthly is setting up nicely for the most common pattern in the market, an impulse to the downside or retracement, another impulse creating a lower low. If we look at it from the weekly time frame, you can see that we've just created this candle that you want to see the next ones fill in the wick. And if we do drop down to the daily time frame, you can see that we've had this move to the downside where we did create this W formation that we do want to see completed at the neckline, which could provide the push that we need to see further continuation to the downside for a lower low to be created. So AUD CHF from the monthly time frame is looking like it is holding this level of resistance in here, where we do have what could be the left shoulder, head, and the right shoulder all in here. So further continuation to the downside could be possible. If we do look at it from the weekly time frame, you can see that we are starting to move to the downside very aggressively with this weekly candle. And if we do go to the daily time frame, you can see that we did just have a push to the downside on the daily. And if we do get some sort of retracement back into this area, then continuations for a lower low could be possible. GBP JPY from the monthly time frame. If we look at it, we are pushing to the upside quite aggressively. We did have previous structure resistance right in here that we were below, but now that we've broken above it, we can expect higher prices. If we look at it from the weekly time frame, you can see that we did break above some structure right in here. And from the daily, since we last spoke about it, we wanted to see the market break above this structure area if it did want to make moves to the upside, and then come back for a retracement before we look for a higher high to be created. This one could be setting up nicely for next week. AUD NZD on the monthly time frame, if we take a look, we are pushing to the upside very aggressively, quite overextended if you do ask me. If we look at it from the weekly time frame, you can see that we are in perfect harmony for impulse, retracement, another impulse to the upside.
It's 18 hours.
And if we look at it from a daily time frame, you can see that this is perfect market structure, breaking to the upside, breaking above some structure, coming back for the retracement, retesting previous structure, resistance now as support, and starting the next move to the upside with an explosive daily candle. If you look at CAD JPY from the monthly time frame, it is pushing to the upside very aggressively. From the weekly, is very extended to the upside, so very aggressively pushing to the upside as well on the weekly. And on the daily, you can see that we are starting the retracement indicated by this candle here. So after the impulse to the upside, it can't move it in one direction forever. A retracement is due. And if we do get the perfect retracement, it could be a good setup going in the next week to look for the move to the upside. On Euro CHF, what do we have on Euro CHF? We did have it coming into previous structure support. So this is the monthly candle, which still has 21 days until close. So just because it's like this doesn't mean that it's going to close like this, but it did break and is now below structure support. But if we look at it from the weekly time frame, we can see that we did have the market coming down and then exploding back up to the upside. But we are coming in at what would be the final level of could be some structure support. If we look at it from the daily time frame, you can see that this is the area that I'm speaking about. So down in here, it's the last level. If the market breaks below here, more than likely it's going to continue to the downside. But on the daily time frame, we do have an impulse that we are starting. And if we do start to get some sort of retracement after the impulse ends, you can look for the continuation to the downside. It would take a little bit for the market to come back to bullish structure. It would need to break above some structure up in here. So that could take a few days. But if we do go over to Euro JPY from the monthly time frame, perfect. Looks like it's going to complete the most common pattern in the market. Impulse to the upside or retracement. Another impulse looking to create a higher high. So further continuation to the upside could be possible. If we look at it from a weekly time frame, we do have the market that moved down, up, down, up, broke to the upside that you would like to see completed at the neckline. But a completion at the minus 382 of the overall impulse would be satisfactory. You can see now that we are starting the retracement after we've had this impulse. If we do get a nice and easy retracement, we then can look for the continuation to the upside. Going down to Euro CAD from the monthly time frame, we are approaching previous structure support that should act as support once again until broken through. If you look at it from the weekly time frame, you can see that we've came into this level right in here that is previous structure support, and we are starting to make moves to the upside. We did create this candle here, which does indicate that we want to see the next ones come and fill in the wick. If we look at it from the daily time frame, we can see that we are starting to make moves to the upside. A little bit of complex correction going on right now. We had the impulse to the upside, the retracement, the start of what would be the next impulse, but we are starting to retrace one more time where we could see a possible move to the upside to create an overextended W formation that could possibly come down and complete the neckline for further continuation to the downside if it wants to move down. If we look at AUD JPY from the monthly time frame, pushing to the upside very aggressively. From the weekly, we just completed this impulse or started this impulse. If we look at it from the daily time frame, you can see that we've come into this level, have the retracement, and looks like we're going to start the next impulse. I would like to see further corrections before I start to look for a next move to the upside. CAD CHF from the monthly time frame. What can we identify is that we did make a move to the upside, did have the retracement. We did have the start of what would be the next impulse, but it was weak. And then we're starting to create what could be a possible another impulse to the downside as of right now. Remember, this is the monthly candle, so it does still have time to close. But if we look at it from the weekly time frame, you can see that we have a nice and easy impulse to the downside, coming back for retracement and starting what would be the next impulse to the downside. So further continuation to the downside could be possible. If we look at it from a daily time frame, though, we do have a daily M formation that we know likes to complete at the neckline, which could provide the retracement for either the continuation to the downside or further continuation to the upside. Where once it completes at the neckline, then it's the market to decide what's going to happen next. If we take a look at Euro AUD from the monthly time frame, we are coming into previous structure support that we were rejecting. Rejected it once over here, rejected it again right here. If we look at it from the weekly time frame, you can see that we did have a weekly W formation, down, up, that you do want to see completed at the neckline. We do have this candle here that does signify that we want to see the next ones fill in the wick, which could provide the move to the upside that would then provide us the completion at the neckline of the overall weekly W formation. But if we do take a look at the daily time frame, we have a nice move up that we did come back down for a retracement, which is kind of aggressive, but we did come into previous structure resistance, now in turn support. It will be interesting to see how this candle opens, the next daily candle opens next week. GBP AUD pushing to the downside quite aggressively. We still have continuation and room to go. From the weekly, well, we are below weekly support, so we had support here. Price did come into it and reject that level, so further continuation to the downside is possible. And if we look at it from a daily time frame, you can see that we did break below some structure of support that was supposed to act as support. See the continuation to the upside, but the market broke down below it. If you do get further continuation and a retracement, could be possible to look for the move to the downside. Going down to GBP CAD from the monthly time frame, very overextended to the monthly, on the weekly, overextended to the downside on the weekly. A retracement is due. And if we look at it from the daily time frame, nothing really too interesting. It is below some daily structure, so it is below daily support. If we do manage to get some breaks above and creation of some structure, could possibly look for a move back up. On NZD CHF from the monthly time frame, what do we have? We have the market that did make an impulse to the downside, followed by a retracement, and is currently impulsing to the downside once again. On the weekly time frame, we have some of the same. We have a nice impulse to the downside, retracement, and pushing to the downside to complete the most common pattern in the market. And if we do take a look on the daily, we did break below some daily structure, and if we do get a retracement, further continuation to the downside could be possible. Moving down to NZD CAD on the monthly, we are approaching previous monthly support right in this area. Could expect a rejection until it is broken through, which is signified by the weekly time frame. We do have weekly support in this area that until broken through, we could see a rejection out of. And if we take a look at the daily time frame, we are below some daily support that we would need to see broken before we start to look for our moves to the upside. NZD JPY from the monthly time frame, very aggressively pushing up. From the weekly time frame, we just broke above some structure. It would be nice to see it come back for a retracement, retesting previous structure resistance. That should now act as support. And on the daily time frame, you can see that we are starting the retracement as of now. And if we do get a nice and easy retracement back down into this area, continuation to the upside could be possible. Now moving along to the exotic pairs. If we look at AUD SGD on the monthly time frame, we are rejecting these lows. So we could see a possible move to the upside. On the weekly, we are trapped in between some weekly resistance. And if we look at it from the daily time frame, we did break down below, but we are breaking back into some structure. If we do get further continuation of higher highs and higher lows on this market, once some more structure is broken, further continuation could be possible. USD PLN from the monthly time frame. Just completed this impulse to the upside. Looks like we are starting the retracement now, but remember, this is the monthly candle. Just because it started like this doesn't mean it's going to close like this. But if we look at it from the weekly time frame, you can see that we did reject previous structure resistance. That acted as resistance once, rejected it once again. That is coming into a double top pattern where we could expect lower prices. And then on the daily time frame, we are approaching some daily structure support right around in this area that, if broken through, if we get a retracement, could possibly see a move to the downside. If we look at USD Thai baht, it is extended to the upside, overextended. A retracement is due. And if we look at it from the weekly time frame, you can see that we do have some of the same things that we saw on USD PLN coming into previous structure resistance and starting to get rejected. If we look at it from the daily time frame, we can see that we are making moves to the downside. Currently looking to impulse, we have several levels of structure that we are below. So we have structure support here. And then we also have some more support in this area right around in here. If we do get a break below this area and then a nice and easy retracement, we could see a continuation to the downside. If we take a look at Euro PLN from the monthly time frame, last spoke about it, we want to see the retracement come into previous structure resistance, now turn support and make a move to the upside. We are starting to break below that, so we could see further continuation to the downside. On the weekly, we have previous structure resistance acting as resistance once again. And then if we drop down to the daily time frame, we are starting to make moves to the downside. If we do get a nice and easy push, breaking some structure and a retracement, we then can look for continuation to the downside on Euro PLN. If we look at Euro SEK from the monthly time frame, we're just approaching this area here. We've approached it several times. We've been rejected several times. If we look at it from the weekly time frame, you can see that we have previous structure resistance not only once, have it twice, and we have it starting now. If we look at it from the daily time frame, it would take this level of structure to be broken for us to look for buys on this market as it currently is right now. So we would need to see this level of structure broken and then a retracement before we start to look for buys. But if it does continue down to the downside, a retracement could possibly set us up for a left shoulder, head, right shoulder type of situation. USD SEK on the monthly time frame, if we look at it from the monthly, we are pushing to the upside quite aggressively. We've been making big moves to the upside every time we've done it, but we can't go in one direction forever. If we look at it from the weekly time frame, it looks like the retracement is starting. And if we look at it from the daily time frame, exactly what we wanted to see. It's a nice move up, come back for some sort of retracement for the continuation. Now, since we are breaking down the way we are, we have several levels of structure that we would need to see broken before we start to look for buys. But if the market does reject from this area and start to make a move up, once these levels are broken, it could be okay to look for buys. And then on the flip side, if the market does continue down to the downside, we then can look for the retracement and continuation to the downside. Euro SGD. On Euro SGD, we've came into previous structure support, been hovering around that area, and we're starting to reject it to the upside. On the weekly, we are starting to make moves to the upside. If we get a further push and a retracement, we would be in a nice situation to see further continuation on this market. And if we look at it from the daily time frame, we have been trapped below this area, all through this area, making moves to the downside every single time. So until we break out of that area, we can't be looking for buys. But if and when we do, everything would be in alignment. So if we look at USD SGD from the monthly time frame, pushing to the upside, completing the retracement and the impulse that we wanted to see. So we got impulse, retracement, impulse to the upside, completing that most common pattern market, or most common pattern in the market pattern. But since then, We started to come in to some areas of resistance once again, that we could see a possible retracement because the market can't move in one direction forever, where it is lining up with a nice and easy W formation that we could provide the move to the upside that we would like to see. That is on the weekly and on the daily. You can see that we've started to break down a little bit. We wanted to see the move to the upside from here for further continuation, but it looks like it wants to go ahead and complete the weekly W pattern, where we would need to see further levels of structure broken once again before we start to look for moves to the upside, if that does happen. Let's go down to Euro-ZAR. If we look at Euro-ZAR, on Euro-ZAR from the monthly time frame, we are pushing above some levels of resistance, so we could see further continuation. If we look at it from the month or the weekly time frame, we are pushing above some weekly resistance as well. We do have a market that just broke above some weekly resistance as well. If we do get some sort of retracement back into this area, further continuation could be possible. And if we look at it from a daily time frame, you can see that we just impulsed above this level, where some sort of retracement is possible and is more than highly likely. After that, we could see a continuation to the upside for a higher high to be created as well on this market. GBP DKK, if we look at it from a monthly time frame, on the monthly, we are in these levels of support right in here. So all through here is monthly support. We're expecting a bounce. If you look at it from the weekly, we are approaching these levels once again, where until we are broken through, we can't be looking for any moves to the downside. You don't want to be selling at the lows. So a retracement would provide the best probabilities for us to look for a continuation to the downside. But if we look at it from a daily time frame, you can see that we've came into this area where we've had structure support, then we broke through it, and we are starting to come back for what is an needed retracement. And if we do get a flush break back through, we'll then have a perfect pattern to see further continuation to the upside with the inverted head and shoulders pattern. GBP NOK from the monthly time frame, we are approaching these levels of support down in here, where we could see a possible rejection out of this. If we look at it from the weekly, we did come into this area. We did play around, consolidate sideways in this area as we are now in it. Still the same thing on the daily. We had a little move to the upside, but since then we've just consolidated sideways. So nothing really too important on this market. If we do start to break to the upside, we could see it possibly retest the highs of this consolidation area once again. But if we do get the break to the downside, further continuation is highly likely. SGD JPY from the monthly time frame, quite overextended to the upside. You can't move in one direction forever, but it is possible to see further continuation. On the weekly time frame, we do have this overextended W formation, where you would like to see it complete at the neckline, but the 382 of the overall move up is satisfactory. And then if we drop down to the daily time frame, you can see we just made this move up, and if we get a nice and easy retracement, further continuation to the upside is highly likely. If we look at USD ZAR, on USD ZAR, we are pushing to the upside quite aggressively on the weekly, pushing to the upside, breaking and retesting this structure, and now rejecting it to the upside. And then on the daily, we are breaking above some structure, breaking and creating higher highs and higher lows. It would be ideal to see a nice and easy move to the upside, breaking some structure before we start to look for a continuation. GBP SEK from the monthly time frame, starting to get rejected out of this area. It's been rejected once, twice, thrice, 4 times, 5 times, 6 times. So a pretty strong level of resistance. If we look at it from the weekly time frame, we do have an area here that we are starting to break down after we get the most common pattern in the market. So further continuation to the downside could be possible. If we look at it from a daily time frame, we are breaking below some structure to where if we get a retracement, further continuation to the downside could be possible. GBP SGD from the monthly time frame. If we look at it from the monthly time frame, we are quite overextended to the downside. where we could possibly start to see some rejections. If we look at it from the weekly, we do have this weekly candle that was just printed that is bullish, but doesn't necessarily mean we're going to start to see a full reversal. And just a retracement could be possible after this overextended daily move. So we've had this move to the downside. We are still below daily support. Just a retracement out of here could be possible, and then we could see further continuation going into next week. NOK/SEK from the monthly time frame, rejecting previous structure resistance, even though we do have a nice and easy impulse retracement and the start of what would be the next impulse to the upside. We can't move in one direction forever, so a retracement is due. And if we look at it from the weekly time frame, we are starting to get a weekly retracement. That if we look at it from the daily time frame, we can see that we are still below some daily structures. So we would need to see those levels broken before we start to look for a continuation to the upside. But if that does happen, it would be ideal to see this move back up. NOK/JPY from the monthly time frame. If we look at it from the monthly time frame, if I actually get on it, we can see we've had an impulse or retracement, and we're starting the next impulse to the upside. So further continuations could be possible. We are starting the moves to the upside on the weekly as well. And then if we do drop down to the daily, you can see that we've just made a move breaking above some structure on the daily time frame. We just came back for a retracement, and we could see further continuation to the upside. I would like to see a deeper retracement, but if we do start to break up again, I would like to see a retracement after we finish the next impulse. USD NOK on the monthly time frame, we are currently above some structure resistance, so until broken below, it should act as structure support. If we look at it from the weekly time frame, you can see that on the weekly we are just coming back for a retracement, retesting previous structure resistance that should now act as support. If we look at it from a daily time frame, you can see that we are starting to make moves to the downside on the daily, but if we do, it would put us in a nice situation to where we have a daily M pattern where we would like to see the completion at the neckline, which could help further aid in the continuation to the upside. Euro NOK on the monthly. On the monthly, we have left shoulder, head, right shoulder. We'd like to see further continuation to the upside. On the weekly, we did just break above some structure, coming back for a retracement. We'd like to see further continuation on this market. And if we look at it from a daily pattern, we are starting to get rejected, but we could possibly see a move where we create an M formation and that we start a move to the neckline that further that helps us in the further continuation to the upside. USD CNH on the monthly time frame, quite overextended, due for a retracement. On the weekly, quite overextended, due for a retracement as well. On the daily, it looks like we are starting to get that retracement. We're currently below some structure support on the daily. We wanted to see a move to the upside from here. Could still be possible, but we need to see some levels of structure broken before we start to look for the move to the upside. USD ZEC Corona pushing to the upside quite aggressively, impulsing as well, due for a retracement. On the weekly, looks like we are starting the weekly retracement after we've had an impulse to the upside coming into previous structure resistance that should now act as support. And on the daily, we are starting to get a move down to where if we do get a breakdown below, we would be set up perfectly for this M formation that we want to see completed at the neckline that could further aid continuation to the upside, creating higher highs and higher lows out of this market. USD DKK from the monthly time frame, quite overextended to the upside, due for a retracement. On the weekly, we are retesting previous structure resistance that should act as support until broken through. On the daily, we are starting to break down where we could be in a possible M formation as well from there. If the market does want to go on and create higher highs and higher lows out of this market, that could be a possible pattern it does create. If we look at USD Huff on the monthly time frame, quite overextended. Looks like we are starting the retracement. On the weekly, we are breaking below previous structure resistance that should now act as support, but is failing to act as support. So if we do start to get some retracement in this area, we could possibly see what would be left shoulder, head, right shoulder, which could help further aid the continuation to the downside. If we drop down to the daily time frame, you can see that we are starting to break and close below some structure as well. That if we do get further continuation to the downside and a retracement, we could look for the possible move to the downside. Jumping down to USD Mexican peso on the monthly, we're still trapped in between this area on the monthly. On the weekly, still trapped. We just had impulse retracement. Looks like we're starting the next impulse, but they're weak candles. And if we do look at the daily time frame, you can see that we are coming into this area of resistance after we've had this M formation completed. We would like to see further continuation to the downside and then a retracement before we start to look for any possible moves. But other than that, nothing really too exciting on USD Mexican peso. If we take a look at BTC USD Bitcoin, we are at previous structure resistance, now turn support. So a bounce once again, because it looks like we are failing to create. We've already had the impulse retracement, and this would be the start of the next impulse, but we're failing to get the next impulse, creating a double bottom. If we drop down to the weekly time frame, you can see that in a little more depth right here, where we could possibly see a move to the upside to complete this weekly M formation. If we look at it from the daily time frame, you can see that we are starting to break above some structure. That if we get a possible retracement back down in this area, we could see further continuation to the upside, just to go ahead and further aid in the bounce out of this monthly previous resistance now turn support and this double bottom on the weekly. That is pretty much it. So I hope everybody had a good week once again. Hope you all have a safe weekend going into this weekend. I hope everybody stays safe, and we'll be back on Monday. If you got any questions, nothing in the chat. Anybody got anything? No. All right. I appreciate everybody that took the time to view this. I appreciate you giving me the chance just to go over the markets with you. But if nothing else, I hope you have a profitable day on and off the charts. Until next time.